Welcome to the Onstage Podcast, where we deep dive into the power of music and entertainment. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Onstage Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us and watching every episode. Not every episode, but some episodes. But at least you're here watching. Really appreciate everyone who takes the time to watch our series of videos on musicians and those in the entertainment field and wonderful indie artists like this wonderful gentleman here. You're wondering, who is this guy in the glasses? He looks like could be related to Buddy Holly or something.
It's my great
Well,
grandpa.
his name is Mike Wilson, and he's got a group called, you guessed it, but Mike's Wilson. And he's a singer-songwriter from West Virginia. He lives in Columbus, Ohio, and he's currently releasing an album, but he's doing it a single at a time in hopes of reaching as many people as possible. The album PartyTown is a collection of songs that tell the story of trying to navigate young adulthood through the pitfalls of poverty, addiction, and poor choices, especially when it comes to romantic partners. The song You is about struggling to maintain boundaries as toxic people. And I won't get into it here, but on the side of not recording anything, but just between Mike and I share with him a little bit about my romantic partners, the toxicity, and I could write 50 songs with that one. But he only had to write one.
Just
Now,
one.
the song You, which is about that, he's previously released a single called The Bitter End, which is a video we will play at the end of the podcast, and we will get Mike to introduce it. So this Bitter End is interesting. It tells a story of being duped in a relationship only to be dumped after reluctantly committing. Whoa, if that's not a Darman episode itself. Mike,
Yeah.
we really appreciate you being on our platform today. Thank you so much for the opportunity to interview such an amazing individual as yourself.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I'd like to ask you, what inspired you to become a singer and songwriter?
I've always written songs. I think it's something that that a certain type of creative person just does as a way to just kind of express emotions and that sort of thing. So I took to instruments at kind of a young age. I moved around a lot as a child. So I didn't have a lot of friends. My dad was in the military, so we moved every couple of years or so. So I was always the new kid at school and things like that. So really I spent a lot of time by myself. So I, kind of gravitated towards books and instruments, so I read a lot. And then when I got to an age where I started, I found my dad's guitar in the closet. I started playing with that. And then as I kind of learned how to play a little bit, I almost instinctually started writing songs.
What kind of guitar did you notice it was? Was it a Fender? Was it a Sadowski? Was it a Gibson? Was it a Taylor? Can you figure that out?
Yeah, it was a old Takamine acoustic
Oh,
from the 70s. So my
wow.
grandma had bought it for him. And because he played a little bit back, when he was younger before he got married and stuff. And then so I found it, and it was one of those old ones like before they got. It was they used to Takamine when they basically like ripped off Martin, the Martin Guitar Company. So even the headstock, the writing on the top where it says Takamine and Co. It looked just like a Martin, and it was a really high quality instrument. I still have it, and the acoustic guitar track on that is recorded with it, as is with most of the songs on the album. I still play that guitar very often and use it for recording. So it's, aside from, sounding great and playing well, and all that, it's also, a third generation in my family.
Yeah, you have to usually have it maintained as well, because sometimes the strings will break and then you have to have the wood just polished, and eventually it's going to come to a point where it's not going to be his guitar anymore. It's going to be yours. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, Dad passed. He passed about 5 years ago, so
Mm.
it's mine now.
Did you get along with your parents?
Yeah, yeah, I got along. Actually had a really really tight family. I think just because we moved so much, it was
Mhm.
really just us. Um, yeah, but my parents worked all the time, so I got along with them fine. But they spent most of their time at work, so I mean, I was pretty much left to my own.
Mm.
Excuse me, left to my own kind of vices and my own way as far as growing up.
So I
Not that
take
they
it.
didn't love me; they very much did. But just we got to work all the time. That's the way it is.
So that's true. So I take it that your parents really, really encouraged you to play music and grow from that.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, they did, and still do. My mom still does. So she still comments on all my Facebook posts, and that's my boy. Um, it's like, and it's sweet. It makes me happy.
Of course, you want your mother to do that. Now,
Absolutely.
I really love that song "Bitter End," and you said that was basically a song about being duped into a relationship and then to be dumped after reluctantly committing. I know you probably don't want to get into it, but how were you feeling when that happened? When that just that you know I this relationship you have with this girl, and then suddenly you're dumped when you want to commit. So how did it make you feel?
Like I knew it all along. Like typically it's about in the course of rock and roll when you meet somebody and have sort of a casual relationship um, that you instinctually should be left there, right? And you kind of as the second single there, it kind of follows on this storyline. Um, so where it's like you're in a casual relationship with somebody, um, and they start wanting more, and just by the nature of the casual relationship, it's a bad idea, right? But you know, people towards gravitate towards each other, and it's always good to take a chance if there's a chance that you find somebody that you can, love and be happy with. But that song and that situation that's about is about that person realizing once they got it that they were more comfortable with the casual relationship as well.
Mike, did she ever find out that you wrote that song about her?
Well, for me, it's not just about one person, right? So it's really about, I don't really write songs about particular people. They're really just kind of like a cumulative experience. So if I'm writing about girls or women, it's about like this one woman that is kind of made up of all of my experiences in relationships. And I kind of group them all into one person, like my arch nemesis.
But instead of calling it arch nemesis, you call it the bitter end.
Right, the bitter end, which is also a nautical term. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where you drop an anchor, and if it runs out of rope, then you can't dock. You have to put, so it's the bitter end. So if you get to the end of it, you got to pull it back up and try to find another place to dock.
Yeah, there's actually a Morrissey song called "I'm Sorry," and he talks about never having to find his love of his life, but he talks about drowning, and oh, it's an interesting song, but it sort of makes me remind myself of the bitter end. But when so I'd like to ask you about your song creation. Like, what is the process for creating a song such as The Bitter End and you? How do you start? Well, I know that you have to commit yourself to a girl and then she decides to drop you and then you're like, and then you're on fire, and then you want to write. So what's your first lyric? What was going through your mind when you, okay, this is called The Bitter End?
Um, oh man, every song's different. Um, so the bitter end started out with I just had like the riff, the ba-da, ba-da-da, 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 that sort of thing, and I just kind of came up with that, and I was kind of going through the situation, and that song I just started straight at the verses. It's like I remember thinking I had nothing to lose. Now I'm the blank. It keeps going on. Um, and then I just kind of wrote the verses, and then I kind of looked at the verses and kind of pulled the chorus from that.
So we all write songs, especially the big artists and other musicians, they write songs based on experience. And so when you wrote the song You, and that's struggling to maintain boundaries with toxic people, I guess you're the type of person that if you're friends with somebody and meet somebody and you realize that they're causing an issue in your life and they're becoming toxic, this song is about that.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really just suddenly say, "You're toxic, get away from me." How do you end a
No.
relationship without having a problem?
Well, the song is there's a back and forth there. So You is about that one person that you should break. You should just break it off with. From experience is toxic. But you find yourself habitually going back, or hanging out with them, or kind of back into those comforts, and that's the back and forth in that song is about you know um, about that struggle, about how, okay, well, I know that this shouldn't happen, but this is the last time. This is the last time. It won't happen again. All right, just this last one. Just this once. Funny enough, that song started off as like an electro pop song with one of the girls that is is an inspiration behind all of this. Um, that was for a band that never happened, right? So it was a band that was supposed to. We were playing bluegrass gospel of all things
Hmm.
at the time in New York. We were subway musicians, and we were playing, old Appalachian, close harmony, Louvin Brothers, Ralph Stanley kind of gospel. But we also liked, we both came from like punk rock backgrounds and rock and roll. Um, so we were kind of working on this like electro pop rock and roll project. And the music for You started out in that project. But as that relationship fell apart, those songs went away. And then I ended up repurposing it later. But it's completely different than what it was, of course. Basically just the basic chord structure for the verse is the only thing that's left of what it started as.
What do you think is the most challenging aspect of writing lyrics?
I think the most challenging aspect of writing lyrics is to be honest. Um, Writing songs is being a songwriter. It's a vulnerable position, to be in. I think that a lot of us are, um, you know, self-conscious to start, right? And we don't really write songs. The purpose isn't to get in front of people. It's to kind of find a healthy way to manage the emotions we feel. And so I think the hardest part and the most challenging is to stay honest and overcoming the fear of really just putting it out there for the world of this is how I feel and this is what I'm afraid of and this is what's going on, and just putting it all out there and just letting people judge you for it, because it's a vulnerable position. A lot of people try to hide how they really feel, whereas songwriters if you're honest about it, really, really put it out there.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I know that people write their songs based on experience, and you wrote "You" and "Bitter End" through experience. I was speaking to another artist, and they had a song, and I asked them, "What do you want your listeners and those who love your music? What do you want them to take away with it?" Like, for instance, like you don't want people like how I felt when I listened to "Bitter End." It reminded me of my relationship. Does listening to Bitter End always bring you back to that issue you had with this relationship, or are you so far um so far ahead that when you listen to it, it doesn't mean anything to you anymore?
I mean, I think it's always there, but I think that if anything, it reminds me of the lessons that I learned through it. And my hope is that by writing the song and by putting it out there, that somebody that's going through a similar situation can resonate with it and maybe, if not learn from it, at least, feel some comfort that somebody else has been through it.
Yeah, songs always resonate with people. I know the song usually resonates with me, but I um I mentioned to people about that Imagine Dragons has a song called Wrecked, which Dan Reynolds wrote about the death of his sister-in-law Lisa from cancer. So he wrote a song about her, how he felt towards her death. But when you have others pulling out cover songs and singing that song just as much as you want, if you have people singing the bitter end, do you really want people to be brought into this where they're like the bitter end reminds me of da 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 da, or do you just want them to take those lyrics in the bitter end and maybe make it mean something totally different?
I mean, it's to me, it's all perception. People are going to hear what they want to hear, and people are going to take what they want to take and leave what they don't. So I guess I don't really think about it that much about that. I think that I hope that it's has a positive effect. Um, and if they can take it and if they um, hear the song and it makes them think of something else other than what I intended,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's fine. I just hope that it's positive, and I hope that something like that doesn't keep you know drag people back into those feelings and keep them in a hole, and have it justify, maybe drinking too much or drugs or sadness over, um, that situation. Where the whole song, I think, taken as a whole, is really all about working through it, and kind of getting your head around it and moving on, despite of it.
Yeah,
You know,
Mike, I know what you're talking about.
so
Uh,
at least it's like the line, at least I sip the bitter end, and like what I was going for there is like the reference to that last part of a beer, right? That isn't very good, you know. But I committed, and I was in it, and I did it, and I didn't run away, you know. So I was in there to do it, and I'm not sorry. By not doing it in the first place, I could have saved myself a bunch of grief, sure, but I
yeah,
did, and I stayed in there and did what I said I was going to do, um, and I think I'm the better person for that.
yeah, that's good to hear. Your song, you think your songs are easy to write? Like, for instance, did you ever have like a writer's block? What do I write next? Or was it like, "Grr."
Oh no, it's a process. I've had songs that have taken 5, 6 years to write.
Hmm.
Where I'll have like some a piece of music, um, and I'll write a verse, and I'll just kind of hit a wall on it, and I'll just kind of leave it in the notebook. And then 6 months, a year, 2 years, down the road, I'll be doing something and I'll think of a chorus or some little catchphrase that'll pop up, and I'll be like, "Oh, that'd be great for this," and then I pull out the notebook and then it comes together. Then I really try not to rush it.
Yeah, you're making me think of, as Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr said, the last Beatles song, Now and Then. They've been working on that for 40 years and they finally just released it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so I can understand that. And I mean, obviously, but how do you know when a song is truly finished? How do you know that maybe there could be another line in there? Maybe I should put another.
Yeah, that's tough. And it's really hard to say. I mean, I think that there's always a part of me that thinks, "Oh, well, it could have been better. That line could have been better. It could have been more clever. Could have been this, that, or the other." Um, but ultimately, it comes down to, I think, performing. When you played, like, there's been a couple songs from it that I changed the lyrics a lot, especially in this last round of recording, where I performed them for a couple years with different lyrics here and there, but in the process, and then when I changed them, in the last thing, it kind of just felt right. Um, but yeah, that's a tough. There's really no real way to know. There's no objective unit of measure. That you can plug it in and get a green light or a red light. Um, it's just how you feel, and you look at it and say, okay, is what I'm. You kind of step back and you think, okay, well, is what I'm trying to say being communicated um, in a way that kind of gets that across, but also has enough room for people to kind of um, adapt their own experience into it. So you don't want it to be too specific, but you don't want it to be too vague. You want it, Goldilocks. Uh,
I know what you mean.
And that's different for everybody.
That's true. So, what part of your song is the oatmeal then?
Oh, man. I would have to say probably the guitar work.
That's awesome.
I'm a guitarist at heart.
Yeah.
I play other instruments and I sing reluctantly sometimes. Not my favorite thing to do, but I'm a guitarist at heart for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, what one of your songs would you consider to be most personal to you, and why?
Oh, man, well, they're all really personal. Off for this record, for this concept that I'm doing, it's a very personal record. It's all about my struggles of kind of coming through um, scene life and the relationships that are there, and you're talking of distorted sense of family, and it's kind of, and there's a lot of lessons learned there. So I think all of them are very personal. Um, I think of the two that are released, I think that you would be the most personal to me. Um, and then upcoming release, there's a song called "PartyTown" that is going to be released. Probably not this next release, but the one after that, probably October.
Hmm.
Um, that I think is probably the most personal song on the record. That really, really kind of, you know, that I really brought out from the core of me.
Well, you mentioned that you wanted to release your album. So, how many songs are you waiting to release before you? Okay, that's the album. Let's print it.
There's 10 songs on the record. So there's 10, and "You" is the second song. So um, if all goes according to schedule, I'll be releasing one a month for about a year, and then after that, I'll um, compile them all into one, and then hopefully after that, the next one I can just release the whole record at a time. just at once.
So you must have a ton of songs just waiting to be released.
Yeah, like I said, I've been a studio troll. We were talking earlier. I've been kind of a studio troll for like the last 3 years. Like especially since COVID is when I took the opportunity to kind of build a home studio and start learning that stuff. So yeah, I got a lot of stuff stored up, and I've taken my time with it to get it how I like it. And I work with another producer. I think it's really good to work with another producer just to have that sort of other set of ears. Sometimes, especially if you're mixing and producing your own stuff, just to have somebody say, it's good enough. It's fine. That's good, because there's a tendency to kind of be like, and then just go back and rework it and nothing ever really get done.
Yeah. I was telling somebody just the other day that like the one relationship I had, she was a singer and she was really good too, and I supported her work. But one day she noticed, and I didn't know she was there. She heard me singing and she said, "Don't give up your day job." So because of that negativity and that feedback, I stopped singing for like 10 years.
Oh, no.
How do you incorporate feedback in your songwriting process, especially from the one you're working to say, yes, it's good enough? But what if he said, oh, crap, Mike, you can do better?
Well, I believe him. I believe him. He says, this isn't, I think we can do better here. I take that to heart, and I always, 100% of the time when that situation's come up and that conversation's happened, I've been able to do better.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of pretty hard on myself, so that conversation doesn't happen very often. But it does happen. It's and I think that's the reason, to work with somebody else. Is to have that sort of objective kind of other point of view. But I mean, you got to listen to criticism. I mean, there's plenty of it. As an independent artist, it's some could argue that's about all there is. But um, you learn it. It all depends who it is. If it's coming from somebody you respect and you trust, that has your best interest at heart, then you heed it. If it's from somebody who is, maybe not that, then you don't, and you do it anyway. So I guess to answer the question concisely would be it's a case-by-case basis.
So when you come up with a theme, like for instance, theme or message of your song, like, Bitter End or You or PartyTown, if you had a fight in a bar with someone, you'd probably write a song about that, call it Glass Whiskey or something. But do you start with the riff of your guitar, or do you just start saying lyrics and then, hey, what? I was in a bar and he struck me 3 times. Is that how you do it?
It's each song, like I said earlier, each song's different. For the majority of my writing, um, I would say that 60% of the songwriting's done in my head before I pluck a note or put pen to paper. So as I'm going about my day, doing whatever I'm doing, there's always something going on up here. And so by the time I sit down to say, okay, well, this is actually going to be a song, mentally, I've kind of worked through pretty much what it's going to be. And then, of course, there's some, translation things between here and the physical world, right? That, you have to adapt for. But before I really try to, like, make something a song as opposed to just music, yeah, like about, I would say 60% is usually all done mentally before I even try to do that.
That's true. You talk about things are going on up here and up here. How do you deal with your mental health, Mike? You got all the songs, you got the strumming with the guitar, not drumming. How do you deal with your mental health? Because you got your kids.
Right. Well, it used to be drugs, alcohol, and women. That's what the record's about, you know? Um, and no, but since then it's really just, you know, it's all about progress, and it's all about being thankful, gratitude. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed when I'm really busy, when it's like, oh, I got this, that. I got to do this, that, and then I got to get ready to go travel to play shows, and I'm going to miss my kids, and I got to do this, that. Um, I just think, well, I could be bored, you know, I could be bored and boring, and so at that thought, it kind of changes to like, wow, I'm thankful that I'm able to do so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that kind of shifts, to gratitude as opposed to the burden of having to do so much. So, pressure is privilege.
Yeah. So, how do you balance your personal life with your music besides mental health? It must be like you have to spend time with your wife, I suppose, your kids, and then, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to put the kids to bed. I'm going to go and play guitar and write some music. Is that how it works? Or it's like this is the day you're going to spend with your family, the weekends you do your music? How does that balance go?
Um, well, scheduling is tricky. I just basically take the time when I can. Um, my kids are pretty understanding. The ex-wife, not so much. um, but,
Mm.
um, but, they're pretty understanding about that sort of thing. And, you just have to do both. And so when there's not really an option, um, you find a way. And it works out. There are there times where I feel like, oh man, I really need to finish these tracks. I got this guy calling, asking for him, and I got trying to meet this deadline for this release. But I just need, yeah, that happens. But they wait. you know, you
That's
can't
in,
rush a miracle, man. You get a rotten miracle.
yeah, that's interesting. You got people calling you and saying, when is this going to be done? And the collaboration you have, how does collaboration play, especially in the album creation process? Like you mentioned that you work with, like how does that work that you don't end up like it's good enough? Okay, I believe you. How do you prevent that?
I, you know, I, it's never come to that. I think that our relationship is solid enough, and that there's enough mutual respect there, um, and that we both want, you know, the best songs possible. So yeah, that sort of things never really come up. We're both understanding of each other's schedules and stuff like that. That's why it's taken so long to really start releasing these songs.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to start releasing songs until until they were all done. Because I didn't want to start and then have to stop due to schedule stuff and things like that. Um, and that's the way you get the best stuff. You want the people working on it to be happy working on it, and you want them to be comfortable enough to be doing their best work.
Yeah. How like how do you stay motivated and not that you're gonna wake up in the morning? I can't. I don't want to do music anymore. I want to do something totally different. What prevents you from just throwing in the towel and giving up?
I mean, it's just it's just part of my nature. It's an inherent part of my being. I don't think I've never had that thought. Like when my kids were younger, and I was married, I didn't. I didn't play a lot of shows. I didn't tour. I didn't really, record or anything. But I always played, and I still wrote songs. So it's it's never really been about other people. It's always been about me, and you know, just trying to express and communicate my emotions in a constructive way.
How about this clincher? How much, how tempting is it to use AI in your song process?
Not at all. I mean, in a couple different instances, like there are some like MIDI instruments that kind of use some AI stuff as far as like inflection and like tone and um, what a horn player does as far as their breaths, as far as synthesizing the sound. But in drums and things like that, that have an algorithm that says, oh well, drummers typically do this at this sort of time,
Mm-hmm.
as far as their dynamics and stuff. Um, but as far as just typing in, oh, give me a cool '70s
Yeah.
garagey rock song that I can whine to, no, that's that. I mean, that's not what it's about.
How
Um,
cool would it be for you to do a duet with Buddy Holly?
oh, that'd be fantastic. So yeah, I mean, I guess in that sort of thing, if you could type in to say, oh, I want Buddy Holly to sing harmony on the bitter end,
Yeah.
and have that could be cool. But I also, think that there's probably another artist out there that that is equally or even more talented, that would bring just as much or more to the song. Whereas saying, "Oh, well, it's Buddy Holly," it would become more of a marketing thing, um,
Okay.
as
Well, you could,
opposed to really having like the song, the interest of the song at heart.
yeah, you could get Michael Jackson. You could get Mark Hollis from Talk Talk. You could get all those wonderful who are now passed away artists like David Bowie and George Harrison playing like backup on your song, Bitter End. Ooh, and maybe Barry Gibb,
Right.
Bitter End. It's tempting, I know, but I don't know if you ever use Suno or Udio. Those are the two AI music generated software programs. And so what they did is I always keep, people are going to wonder why you keep telling people this. What I'm going to tell you now. So I heard, I don't know if you're familiar with the group Aqua from the 80s. They had a song called Barbie Girl.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay, so Lena Nystrom, who's the lead singer, she played in Agua. She sang, "You can brush my hair and dress me everywhere." Well, what they did is they put that through a Johnny Cash AI. Now he's singing that. Now imagine him saying, "You can brush my hair and dress." I just went, "Oh my God, no, thank you." So yeah, you can make. They had
Yeah,
they had created two Amy Winehouse songs. It sounds like her music, but it wasn't Amy Winehouse. That's how scary it is. So you could literally do a Bee Gees song,
yeah,
and so
yeah. There's a lot of worries about what that means for the music industry, and one, like, the music industry is a disaster anyway
mm, mm.
right now. And I think that that it's changed, and it's been and it hasn't really landed on solid ground yet. I think that AI is going to be it's going to really hurt like commercial musicians, people who are making commercials, jingles, soundtracks, things like that. I think it's going to I think it doesn't look so good, right? But
Hmm.
I think there will always be a market for just basic human emotion.
Yeah,
And
and also the
and
talent
so
aspect as well.
yeah, well, I mean, the talent, I mean, as far as like musical talent, like instrument, proficiency or whatever, I mean, the tech kind of chips away at that too, I mean, for a lot of the tech that's available, for recording stuff now, I mean, you don't have to really to do a lot. um, and to be able to do it. So even that, but I think that the songwriting itself, those human emotions, and how people feel, and the need to relate to other people going through those situations and having those feelings. I don't think that AI will be, you know, able to really to capture that. I mean, I think that there's a formula from what makes the brain say, this is good music, and this makes me hit the button, and I think you see that in a lot of pop music now, where it's like, it's pretty much just a formula. It's like, we're going to do this, and the bass is going to sound like this, and this is going to be the tempo, and it's going to be in the key of Y, and um
Mm-hmm.
but lyrically there's not really a whole lot of substance, and I think that there's a market for that, and but there's still always going to be a market for just good, solid human emotion, compassion, empathy. Um, just knowing that there's another human being going through the same thing, I think, will become more valuable.
Yeah.
I hope, at least.
I think I heard that Taylor Swift used AI for her last 2 or 3 albums. That's probably why she can, you know, do these 2, 3 albums a year, probably because she puts them to an AI. And so, I mean, she doesn't mind doing that. So she's a multi-billionaire. She's a good businesswoman. She started out as a country singer. And there's a girl who had spent almost $10,000 on a Taylor Swift ticket. I'm like, did you pay for your student loan yet? I mean, it's
Right?
ridiculous. So
Yeah.
how do you manage um, the money and financial aspect of getting your money? People can buy your song, or how do you handle that?
Oh man, that'd be a great problem to have.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not, again, it's not really about money. I mean, it is, unfortunately from recordings right now for independent artists, there's just not a lot of money there.
Hmm.
Um, you know, the, you know, the streaming platforms and all that's kind of rigged, it's all set up for the bigger artists. Um, the discovery tools don't work unless you're already selling records, and
Mm.
that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's kind of, right back where it's always been, where it's like, you got to go out, you got to hit the road, you got to meet the people, and you got
Hmm.
to make those interpersonal impressions and connections with people. Um, so I think there's a lot of artists trying to just record music and put it out there. I mean, there's how many millions of songs released to Spotify every day.
Uh-huh.
Um, and 90% of them, 95, I think, something ridiculous, have less than 1,000 streams.
Yeah.
Um, so
But Toxic by Britney Spears reached a billion streams. You know what I mean?
yeah, well,
Post Malone with the song Circles is almost at 2 billion or whatever.
all
It's
right, and
ridiculous.
that's not all because of their songwriting ability. There's, I mean, that's just the way the business is. That's the way it's always been. It's always been like that ever since there's been an industry. Um,
Mm.
the independent movement, what it did, especially, and I'm talking like, late '90s, early 2000s, um, is with and I'm talking like, with Napster and the
Oh,
internet,
that's the
completely
pandemic,
destroyed the
yeah.
music industry. And I was playing in punk bands at the time, and I still love punk rock, and I still do that. But now I tell, the artists that I work with, it's like, all right, guys, well, we did it. We destroyed the music industry, right? We completely did. We took it down, burned it, right? Now what? It's you're still dealing with the same people, right? It's still the people that are signed to the labels that have all the money behind them, and that have all
Hmm.
the teams working for them, that are getting all the streams. It's just because that's the infrastructure that's there. It's not saying that independent artists can't do it, um, but I mean, radio and stuff like that. I mean, if you're not solicited from a label or something, you know, there's not even an avenue to get in contact with them. They won't even hear you, you know. So you gotta do the grassroots, man. You gotta go out there and tour and hit the road and make those connections. And yeah, the money isn't going to be what it is. And you know, maybe if you type in some good enough AI prompts, um, you know, you can get that kind of money. But I think for, you know, people that are true and honest about it, that there's no interest to do that, you know. So money can't be your primary driving, you know, that can't be what it's about. If it's all about money, you need to learn how to be a doctor or program a computer or something like that. Your rate of success would be much higher.
Do you wish
But
you
it,
came out during the 70s and 80s when they had like 45s and everyone, Mike's Wilson has like a bitter end on 45, and you got 1.5 million, 2 million people buying that single, and you get like 5 cents from each sale, which is still like 100,000 when you
yeah.
work it out. Yeah, you know.
You know, I can't even really think about that. You know, I'm happy to be where I'm at, when I'm at, in the time period I'm
Mhm.
at. I think that there's enough loneliness in the world and enough people, you know, with all this technology and
Mhm.
everything going on. And I think that that sort of base level human connection is what's missing. I think a lot of people are longing for that. You know, so if anything that I think would be better about that era would have been the lack of technology and that people had to come together for, um, you know, like to get together and listen to a record. You know, now you don't have to get together and listen to a record. You can just stream it on your phone and your headphones, and you don't have that, so you don't get to see how it affects other people. Now, I do think it's coming back around because I think you see that with like the festival scene and the festival circuit, and a lot of people are, you know, like, I mean, festivals are packed with people that are really into music, and uh, and bands are doing really well, you know, with that. For every genre, you know, there's a festival kind of circuit for that. So I think that that's always there, and I think that there's always going to be. I think it's just going to become clearer, the distinction between, okay, well, what the purpose of music is. So for, if you know, if I'm working out at the gym, maybe AI music is good enough, right? But if I'm sad and depressed, um, you know, and having those bad feelings, then that's not going to cut it, right? You need something a little more real, and hopefully that the value gets, you know, gets propped up around that, you know, and less away from who can play the fastest scales, and you know,
Mhm.
and you know, who can write the catchiest tune, and more around who can write the most honest tune and really like portray and evoke that emotion.
Do you actually uh, do you actually perform like at venues in
Yeah.
bars? Yeah. So how do you connect with your audience during one of those live shows? Do you go up to them? They go up to you?
uh, well, for me, typically, like I play solo, so it's just
Mhm.
me. I do have band members that join me here and there, but I don't. Um, I kind of gave up on trying to like manage people, if that makes
Mm.
sense. Um, Especially when I had kids, it was kind of like, look, I'm way busier than you. I don't want to hear it, and I have zero patience. So it's
Mm.
like, you know, if you know, we have rehearsal from 7 to 9, that means I'm there at 10 till 7. I'm loading in gear. I'm tuned and ready to go at 7, and that I'm walking out the door at 9. Um,
Wow.
because I have somewhere else to be. You know, that's how rigid, especially with little children. That's how rigid your schedule is. Um, so I just got tired of wasting time with trying to manage other people's schedules. So I have a network of musicians that, you know, if I'm playing, you know, I have some dates. I reach out and see who's available and who wants to do it. Um, I have all the songs um, online. that I can share with them, so they can, rehearse what they need to rehearse, get together for like one rehearsal or something, and then just go do the show. But to get back to your question, it's a challenge because like I play a lot of punk rock shows,
Mm.
completely different than what I
Mm.
play. So like, so for me to follow, a punk rock band who's been loud and jumping around and shaking beer on everybody, and then just to be me up there doing it, you just have to go at them and let the story and those emotions we keep talking about, and let those kind of do their magic, and um, and I think that people respect that, and like I said, I think there's different purposes for different kinds of music, so when when I step up and perform, people are prone to like, oh geez, this guy must be serious, and most of them are somewhat familiar with my songs, right? So they kind of know what they're in for. And so they've already listened and hopefully related to the lyrics a little bit and understand going into it that, this isn't going to be, a loud punk band, but this is going to be something else.
Mike, what are your thoughts on cover songs? Do you have enough of your own work for a whole hour worth of live performance?
Yeah, yeah, I do play cover songs occasionally, to just to make money. You make a lot more money doing that,
Hmm.
than you do playing original music. I like to play bluegrass. I played traditional Irish music for a long time.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I played in an Irish funk band called the Bloody Irish Boys.
Hmm.
Um, like back in the early 2000s. Um, and then I got into just straight traditional Irish music, and then from there I kind of got back to my roots, and really got into bluegrass music, and especially bluegrass gospel. Um, Not that I'm like super duper Christian or anything, but those songs are beautiful, and and especially that time period of music, and that we're talking about like the formations of the music industry pre Elvis.
Hmm.
Um, the like those sort of old hymns, were popular music. That's what popular music was back in those days.
Hmm.
Um, so I kind of really got into the studying of traditional music and the idea of songs, and how, there's songs that nobody even knows who wrote them anymore. You know, Nobody remembers who wrote them, but those songs still, and they're in the public domain. Um, and so and to me, that's testament to how, like, what a great song. Like, I hope, that, 200 years after I'm gone, that somebody's still singing the bitter end, and they're like, I don't know who wrote this, but here it is.
But what about the Wellerman by Nathan Evans and Satiana, where it says, "There once on a
Yeah,
ship that put to sea, the name of the ship with the Billy O.T." That's an Irish kind of shanty right
yeah,
there.
yeah, for sure.
Could,
Yeah.
can you do that one?
Um, I don't. I could.
I've heard a lot. There's actually a YouTube channel, and all they're
I
doing is
might,
they're playing
I
Irish
might need to
songs
book
or
a
Irish
looper.
chant. They were really good. I never heard some of these songs.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it's like where they come from.
No, there was a big movement of Irish music. I think, in Ireland you had bands like Dervish,
Mm.
came out, and then of course here you had that whole Flogging Molly, Dropkick Murphys kind of
Dropkick
push.
Murphy. Wow.
Um, so that sort of whole like Celtic punk sort of thing that kind of came through, and then kind of below that there was this whole sort of traditional revival. So here in Ohio and around it, they're getting kind of somewhat of a reputation around. But the Drowsy Lads are another, a really really good, just straight traditional Irish, Irish band that are just playing festivals, just playing Irish music.
Do you know like Old Billy Riley and Sloop John B and Eliza Lee, Randy Dandy O, Lowlands Away? Do you know all those Irish songs?
Yeah, I wasn't aware Sloop John B was an Irish song.
Yeah, there's a whole
Yeah.
ton of she shanties. Oh, I have like a list of hundreds here.
Yeah,
One of
there's a
them,
whole lot. I
Sleep is
never
for the
really,
Weak, Rolling
I
Down to
tended
Old
to,
Maui. Yeah.
I tended to gravitate more towards the drinking and fighting songs, and the IRA
Drunken,
songs.
Drunken Sailor, the ones for the
Yeah,
Drunken Sailor.
and like the
Sally
IRA
Brown's a good one.
songs and
Yeah.
Down with the British, that sort of thing.
My friend loves those.
Yeah, the IRA tunes are a lot of fun. And there's a lot of history there, right? So I'm a history buff, so
Well, you
I
only
always like
singing,
that.
well, not just Irish songs, but cover songs like from well-known people, like maybe a Madonna. I attempted a Madonna cover song, and I Take a Bow is one of them, and one of them is a Britney Spears song. I attempted those, and just because it's a song sung by a female doesn't mean that a male artist can't
No,
sing.
sure, yeah. No, there's no reason for that.
Yeah,
There's no reason to be limited. To
yeah.
limit yourself. You do whatever you want. I like to do Thriller. I like to pull out Thriller as a
Really?
cover.
You mean
Yeah.
even the whole dance as well?
I don't dance as good, but yeah, I like to play that. I like to do like some Motown stuff when I do covers.
Nice. Nice.
I like to kind of pull the early indie theme like Neutral Milk Hotel and the Shins.
The Shins. Wow, that's
Yeah,
going way back.
yeah. I'm a big Elvis Costello fan.
Oh, me too. Veronica's
Yeah,
my favorite song.
yeah.
I have. Yeah, Veronica's a good one.
So I usually always pull out at least one or two Elvis Costello songs
Nice.
when I'm
Which
playing
songs?
covers.
Do you mind me asking?
I like to play Radio. I like to play God's
Allison?
Comic.
Oh yeah.
I think God's Comic is a fun one. Veronica's good.
Allison.
Allison. Yeah, all the big ones, Elvis Costello, that guy put out a lot of records and they're not
Yeah.
all great.
No, but
They're
then he
not-
did his soul stuff is pretty good.
Yeah. They're not all great, but when he did hit it right, he hit it right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's just kind of, I think, just goes to show the effect of contracts and when you're required to just pump out so much just volume, they can't all be great.
Yeah.
So songwriting, takes time.
That's true. Well, really appreciate you being here, Mike. And
Yeah.
we're going to link everything down below. His song, everyone, will be showing at the end of the podcast, and we're going to get Mike to introduce it. But I want to ask, what advice would you give to aspiring songwriters about using their experiences in their music?
Oh man, just do it. Do it and don't be sorry. Don't do it for other people. Do it for yourself. And just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Don't stop. Don't let them take it away. World's full of negativity. You got to keep going. Hey everybody, check out my video, The Bitter End. Thank you.
I remember thinking I had nothing to lose. Now when the shit stuck in your shoe tray, being scraped off on the side of the street. I've always had to try not to be obtuse, though I barely slipped your noose this time around. I guess I've always felt that I've had something to prove, but proving what to who? That's proven the question that keeps me from sleep. I'll stop wasting time trying to be refined. Just one more glass glass of wine first, any kind of red will do. Here we go again. High hopes, short ends. I fell for the same tricks again. Beat up, broken span, but at least I sipped the bitter end. But at least I sipped the bitter end. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that one. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate it. Okay, everyone, we're going to end this stream. Thank you, Mike, for being here. Really appreciate everything. Thank you for taking the time. Okay, everyone.
Bye-bye.